So what about moving forward in Washington? I want to bring in Ed Conard. He's a visiting scholar at the American Enterprise Institute, also a former advisor to Mitt Romney, and thinks that Steve Bannon's departure might have been Gary Cohn's price for staying. So you think there was kind of a quid pro quo here?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised. The president was very vulnerable last week, and there are two factions, the kind of mainstream faction and the Steve Bannon faction. I wouldn't be surprised if the mainstream band together, and that was their price for staying.
Right.
If they were going to exert their influence, that would certainly be a time to consider doing it. But I think in the case of Gary Cohn as well, he's also the odds-on favorite to be the Fed chairman after Janet Yellen, so he has
he holds a very big stick then.
Well, he also
Trump.
has a strong incentive to stay as well.
Right.
Lastly, I think, though, that if you look at liberals and conservatives, you know, when you say all Nazis aren't bad, you're in for being chastised and rebuked. But the difference between, I think, the liberals and the conservatives is they can chastise the president and leave him less effective, whereas the conservatives are still trying to push their agenda forward. And so they have to find a way to take a fairly ineffective president and make him as effective as they can be. And so simply just quitting and walking out the door doesn't really advance the conservative agenda. So I think they have to suck it up and find a way to make it work.
Well, you know, I'm just going to go right for the zinger here, though, Ed. I mean, he's seen so many people quit the White House. When's he going to quit the White House?
I don't think that's happening. I think the lesson that Donald Trump teaches over and over again on The Apprentice is you never quit, you never give up, you have to be in it to win it. I don't think there's a chance.
Isn't that being talked about, though, right now?
Away.
It's interesting, but the chatter about it in Washington is rising as we see more and more people leave the White House,
well,
right?
And also, if you look at online betting, it's been up about a third that he doesn't get to the end of 2018. I'd be willing to take that bet that he's still going to be here at the end of 2018, but he's certainly under enormous pressure. I think also he hasn't really assembled the legal team that he needs to counter the investigation that's against him, and he probably needs to crank it up and put some attention on that as well. But the big problem with all of this is the conservative agenda is going nowhere while it's defocused. The liberals are certainly winning this at every turn.
And Ed, it's Yvonne in Hong Kong. I mean, is Trump equaling to Arnold Schwarzenegger 2.0 is what Breitbart News has said is going to happen with Bannon's exit now? Do you see this as actually a way to reset the Trump administration and try to actually do a little bit of execution on economic policies now?
I think it would be, but I do think that Steve Bannon had a powerful insight that won the president the election, and maybe you credit the president and not Steve Bannon, and that is that trade deficits, low-skilled immigration put downward pressure on low-skilled wages, and I think he only has to convince a couple 100,000 voters in order to be elected president in the Midwest who are most affected by these trends. And so I suspect what you're going to find is that the philosophy of Steve Bannon, at least that portion of the philosophy, probably continues forward and is an integral part, I suspect, of the White House economic policies.